Hi everyone, I'm Martin Parker, a product architect here at UST. Today I want to talk about why moving from Jenkins to GitHub is more than just a tooling change. What we're seeing now is that software delivery platforms are becoming key factors in whether AI can work across the SDLC. And in the next few minutes, I'll walk you through why Jenkins estates often get in the way of that shift, why pipeline migrations stall, and what it takes to move into GitHub in a way that's governed, scalable, and built to last. So why does Jenkins struggle when we start talking about an AI native SDLC? When you look across most Jenkins environments, the same issues show up again and again. Pipeline logic is scattered across jobs and scripts. Governance is handled differently by every team, and audit trails are often partial, manual, or bolted on after the fact. Over time, this creates CI and CD sprawl. Delivery logic spreads so thin that there's no clear picture of how software actually moves from commit to production. Now, humans are remarkably good at working around this. Teams know which jobs to run, which scripts not to touch, and who to ask when something breaks. But that knowledge lives in people's heads. And that's the problem. AI needs a very different operating environment. It needs workflow that follow recognizable patterns. It needs controls that behave consistently, and it needs end-to-end context. Without that, AI can't reason about delivery. It can't make safe decisions, and it can't take meaningful action. So this forces a change in how the SDLC is designed. Delivery has to become machine readable. Workflows are expressed as code. Policy and security built in by default, and telemetry and traceability that span the entire lifecycle. That's the shift we're talking about, from Jenkins running jobs to GitHub acting as a delivery platform that AI can actually understand and work with. Once you see the problem, the platform shift starts to make sense. On the Jenkins side, delivery is still centered around pipelines, but pipelines that have grown organically over time. They often start simple, then evolve as dependencies, scripts, and plugins get added to keep things moving. Some are triggered by webhooks, some by schedules, some by people. But the delivery logic itself tends to live inside the pipeline. The result is workflows that are tightly coupled to an environment and difficult to change safely. GitHub is built around a very different assumption. Delivery is event-driven. Workflows operate at the SDLC level, not just inside CI. Environments are typically created on demand as part of the workflow. And automation is machine to machine by default. Policy, security, and context aren't added later, they're part of the platform. So the real shift here is this. We move from running jobs to orchestrating delivery. And that's the point where AI can start to add value rather than just observe from the sidelines. Most enterprises don't run Jenkins. They run a Jenkins estate. That usually means dozens of controllers, hundreds of pipelines, and years of organic growth. Delivery logic is scattered everywhere. Groovy, Bash, YAML, and a large plugin ecosystem. Teams evolve their own patterns. Security and policy are handled different by each group. And from the outside, it becomes incredibly hard to see how delivery actually works. And this is the root of the problem. There is no single system of record. There's no consistent control surface. So delivery isn't visible as a system. And this is why AI struggles. It can't get a clear view of a delivery landscape. It can't trust what it's interpreting. And it can't act without introducing risk. You can't automate, govern, or optimize what you can't see. Before AI can help, delivery itself has to become visible and understandable. That same lack of visibility is exactly why Jenkins to GitHub migration stall or even fail. The common assumption is that migration is about rewriting pipelines. In reality, the hardest part is untangling delivery. On the Jenkins side, teams are dealing with uncontrolled pipeline sprawl, tightly coupled script, and unmanaged secrets. Pipelines are complex, undocumented, and inconsistent. Not because people did anything wrong, but because they evolved organically over time. And this is where things start to break down. There is no clear inventory of pipelines, dependencies aren't documented, and there are no standard patterns to migrate to. At the same time, the target state on GitHub is much clearer. Action policies, environments, copilot and agents, all the building blocks of AI native delivery. But here's the catch. Most migrations fail for one simple reason. Nobody can clearly see what they're migrating. When delivery isn't visible, complexity explodes. Manual rewrites become the default, which slows everything down and increases risk instead of reducing it. This is where PACE StageCraft comes in. StageCraft is built for the reality we've just talked through. Hundreds of legacy Jenkins pipelines and delivery logic that's difficult to understand, let alone migrate. The approach we use is simple. Firstly, we discover. We make the Jenkins estate visible, what exists, where it lives, and how it's connected. Then we look to understand. We analyze patterns and intent, not just pipeline syntax. And finally, we look to automate. We take everything we've learned and translate it into standardized, secure GitHub action workflows. The important point is this. You don't end up with Jenkins pipelines in disguise. We migrate using the GitHub Actions native building blocks, not custom Jenkins logic copied across line by line. This makes the migrated workflows easy to follow, easy to maintain, and familiar to any GitHub native team. And where policies or environment controls are needed, these are also created as part of the migration. So ownership is clear and teams stay in control as they move forward. This creates delivery that is standardized, secure, and governable. And because the CI/CD workflows now live natively in GitHub, GitHub Copilot and agents can see, reason over, and operate on those workflows. That's why StageCraft doesn't just migrate pipelines, it turns Jenkins estate into something that's governable, scalable, and ready for what comes next. StageCraft is different from traditional migration approaches. If you look at the most current migration tools, they focus on conversion. Scripts or generating YAML with Copilot style tools, these approaches can be useful up to a point. But when you apply them to a real Jenkins estate, something important gets missed. They don't understand the context. They don't know why a pipeline exists, how it's meant to behave, or what risks are hidden inside it. So teams end up back where they started, with manual rewrites, reviews, and a little guesswork. StageCraft is designed as a governed migration engine, not just a converter. It starts with discovery, it applies pattern intelligence, and it uses context-aware AI translation, not one-size-fits-all conversion. And before anything is migrated, it runs pre-flight validation so teams know what they're getting. The result is delivery that's secure by design, audit-ready, and built to scale. That's how StageCraft turns chaotic Jenkins estates into reliable enterprise-ready GitHub delivery, instead of just moving the problem from one tool to another. So to wrap things up, if you're thinking about moving from Jenkins to GitHub, the real opportunity isn't just completing the migration, it's doing it faster, at lower cost, and with far less risk. Most organizations underestimate how much time and money gets lost in manual rewrites, repeated reviews, and migration rework. StageCraft changes that dynamic. The result is fewer man hours, faster time to value on GitHub, and a delivery platform that's ready for AI-assisted automation. If this sounds relevant to where you are today, we'd be very happy to continue the conversation and explore how that applies in your environment. Dave Ricks and I will be your main point of contact, and moving forward, we will be happy to help.